Welcome to another episode of Community Chat. My name is Kevin Tocci, and the idea of this particular show is to keep you up to date and aware of a lot of things that are going on in and around the community that we serve here at Abington and sometimes beyond. We speak to folks on all different levels of government and folks who are involved in the communities. Today we have a very, very special guest. Our guest is your state auditor, Diana DiZoglio, and she actually is right now someone who has been fighting to find out what's going on with our state legislature. Now, I'm not sure if any of you out there are aware, but there was a very special, a very unique vote that took place on November 5th, 2024, and 72% of you voted yes. Do you know what you voted yes to? It was for the state legislature is the only one that is refusing to be audited, independently audited. Legislative leaders claim that it is sufficient for the legislature to conduct audits of itself through a procedured private vendor. However, the Massachusetts legislature is continuously ranked as one of the least effective, least transparent legislatures in America and is one of only 4 legislatures that exempts itself from public records law. So we're going to hear to speak with the state auditor, and she's going to give us the details as to this process, because if I'm correct, I think the state legislature in the past has been audited, but she will be able to give us those details. Auditor, welcome to Community Chat.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. It's great to be here in Abington. I'm so excited to be here.
Talk to us a little bit about the process. This vote passed November 5th for you to be able to audit the state legislature, just like you do any agency or department in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, just to make sure that they're running efficiently, and that if there's any inefficiencies, that you're able to point it out.
Exactly. So I'm the state auditor, just for folks at home. My name is Diana DiZoglio, and I hail from the great city of Methuen. Yes, that's a place in Massachusetts. It's up on the New Hampshire border.
Yep.
And I was born and raised there, graduated from the public schools there, and made my home there. And I'm so humbled to be able to serve as your state auditor. I was the state representative for Methuen, Lawrence, Haverhill, and North Andover for 6 years. And then I was the state senator for that area of the Merrimack Valley, going all the way up into the parts of the North Shore, all the way up to Newburyport. And I served as state senator for 4 years. I've been serving as your state auditor, thanks to folks at home for sending me to Beacon Hill to be your voice as your state auditor. I've been serving as state auditor. I got elected in 2022 and started in 2023. And I am in my 4th year, believe it or not, as your state auditor. It's gone by really quickly, Kevin, but it is my job to be the state's chief accountability officer and to make sure that our office is essentially the watchdog office for the Commonwealth, making sure that state agencies and state departments are doing right by the people that they are meant to serve, which is you, the residents of the Commonwealth who are watching today. And we do so by auditing state agencies with respect to their performance, their process, their procedures. A lot of folks say, well, don't you just look at the finances? Well, we do look at the financials, but we also look at whether or not these state agencies and departments have followed the law, followed state regulations, followed their own procedures and their own policies. And then if they haven't, what we do is we shine a light on areas for improvement. We identify gaps in systems, and then we're able to make recommendations for improvements. And we hope that these agencies take the recommendations, but we don't have law enforcement authority. It's important to say that. We have the authority to report on what's happened and then put that out there to you, the general public, the people of Massachusetts, and increase transparency and then increase accountability by making sure that the taxpayers can see what's going on. And maybe there's some public pressure put on these agencies. Maybe there's some public pressure put on the administration or the legislature to take action. And then we hope that these agencies and departments do the right thing, improve how they're doing business. And most times they do actually take our recommendations. Sometimes they don't. And then sometimes, Kevin, as you just said, Sometimes they don't want to participate at all, which is simply what's happening with our state legislature right now. So we audit the MBTA, we audit the Department of Children and Families, and right now we have a situation where our legislature is supposed to be audited because 72% of you went to the polls and said that they should be audited, but they're actually breaking the law right now by not being audited. Now, before I continue with this conversation, I think it's important to say that your state representative here in Abington is actually Allison Sullivan, correct? She's very supportive of the audit. She's been great to work with. So kudos to Representative Sullivan for supporting this audit, for supporting transparency. And then also your senator is John Keenan, right?
Yep.
Your senator also supports this work and supports transparency and has been a very vocal advocate for accountability in the Senate, stood up to Senate President Karen Spilka, was one of the only senators to do so recently. I had the honor and privilege of serving with Senator Keenan when I was a state senator, and he oftentimes would buck leadership alongside of a group of us, actually. We were kind of the misfits in the Senate. I think it was a good thing to be a little bit of a misfit in the Senate. But, he was able to stand up, and so was Representative Sullivan. And, that was done in a nonpartisan fashion. Rep. Sullivan is a Republican. Senator Keenan is a Democrat.
Correct.
But as I often say, transparency is a nonpartisan issue. Good government is a nonpartisan issue. So I, as a Democrat, have worked together with both sides of the aisle to make sure that we're increasing transparency and accountability at the State House. And we've been able to do so by passing that 72% voter approved law at the ballot box by working with people of all political stripes to get this done. But unfortunately, the Senate President and the Speaker of the House have decided that they don't want to follow the law, and they are breaking the law that you voted for, and it's caused a lot of concern, and that concern is, what are they hiding if they don't want to be audited by the Office of State Auditor, as you, the voters, have mandated?
So what information or what access has your office requested and repeatedly been denied by the leadership up on Beacon Hill? And secondarily, what about any of the other constitutional officers? I believe that you have asked for assistance from them. But let's first start with, what is the information that you're seeking that they're repeatedly denying?
Yeah, so we've actually only asked for financial documents and state contracting information. Those things are certainly not unconstitutional to view. It's simply taxpayer-funded documents, and what they are claiming is they're claiming that that's a power of the legislature and that we're violating the separation of powers clause in the Constitution by simply seeking to review financial documents and state contracting documents. I've never heard of something so absurd, Kevin. Give me a break, okay? My office is subject to the state's public records laws. When folks call and they need access to a document that they just want to review for whatever reason, we just give it to them. It's not a big deal, We follow the public records laws. There are privacy exemptions. For example, if a constituent reaches out to us and they're talking about something very personal to them, like an issue of concern, if somebody experienced domestic violence or something, or if they experience some sort of an issue with the agency and they're blowing the whistle on some sort of problem in an agency that they're working for, we are able to redact that person's private information. We're able to redact any social security numbers or anything that is HIPAA protected, or even their name. If they reach out and they say they need privacy, we're able to redact their name. So, there are privacy protections for people when things are released to the general public, and certainly we respect that. But taxpayer-funded receipts for how you spend taxpayer dollars on things like office supplies, or, if you're going on trips with taxpayer dollars and you're using taxpayer resources for state contracts to enter into contracts with folks, those things are very much supposed to be available to the general public. But since the legislature exempts themselves from the public records laws, they don't seem to understand that that's just what's supposed to happen normally in most state entities. That's what Abington does. Abington actually makes those records available for the general public, and actually every city and town makes those types of records available to the general public. So, for the legislature to say, not only are they going to exempt themselves from the public records laws, but they're also going to now refuse to be audited, even though we just all voted for this, right? That is a cause for concern. We're not trying to get access to personally sensitive information for the purposes of making that available to the general public. What we're doing is we're trying to get access to taxpayer-funded documents to make sure that they're scrutinized, to make sure that they're following the law. So that's certainly not unconstitutional. The Constitution is there to protect the people, not the politicians, Kevin.
So I just want to double check, though. This isn't what you're asking. This isn't new, that this is a process that has happened previously during our history, hasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Since 1849, actually. Since 1849, the Office of State Auditor has audited the state legislature down to the Speaker's last cigar purchase, believe it or not.
Okay.
Okay. We have actually put these documents on our website, www.mass.gov/auditor. You can go to my website. You can actually look at these documents. We digitize them and put them all up online. Because they weren't digitized years ago before I took office, it became the thought that this had never happened before, right? That this was something new that I was actually trying to do. Well, it's actually not. Actually, I'm not the first Italian-American state auditor to fight with the Speaker about this. Former auditor Joe DiNucci, he was the boxer.
Yeah.
Also a fighter. Again, another Italian-American, of course. We tend to be loud and wave our hands around when we're talking about these things. But he fought with the former Speaker of the House, and at the time it was Speaker Flaherty. And he fought with Speaker Flaherty because Speaker Flaherty said to Auditor Joe DiNucci, when Joe DiNucci went in to do his routine audit of the state legislature, the Speaker said essentially, well, you're not auditing me. And Joe said, oh, yes, I am. And the Speaker said, no, you're not. And they got into a very public debate about this. And they duked it out in the public eye. And unfortunately, Auditor DiNucci didn't get his audit. The Speaker got his way back then. And Auditor DiNucci did try to do it, though. He tried to file a bill that clarified in the law that he had the ability to continue to conduct his audits. And unfortunately, as we know, the Speaker of the House, if the Speaker doesn't want a bill to pass, it doesn't get passed. Even if you have 100, plus state representatives supporting a bill, if the Speaker doesn't want it passed, it's not going to pass. So that bill never saw the light of day, unfortunately. And it just became the common thought that audits never got done. And now we're sitting here in 2026, and it's been thought that this never got done before, and this woman from Methuen just came up with this. No, this was always done since 1849, and unfortunately, after Auditor Joe DiNucci left office, my predecessor didn't really fight to continue to do this, and she did a lot of good work, but she didn't really push this issue, and it just sort of got kind of lost in the mix. And when I got elected, when I campaigned, actually, I said, if you elect me, I'm going to push this issue. And I am going to make sure that we fight to audit the state legislature. So when I was told no by the state legislature, when I went in to conduct the audit that I said I was going to conduct, I took it to the ballot box and I said, well, let's let the people decide. Let's let the people say whether or not they want the Office of State Auditor to conduct audits. And you spoke loud and clear. And you said, yes, you want this to get done, and you recognize that this is a matter of promoting accountability and promoting transparency and promoting accessibility. And now the Speaker, the Senate President, and our own Attorney General Andrea Campbell, she is fighting back against the 72%. Now, she claims that she supports this. Friends, the Attorney General does not support this at all. She has never once met with me. I'm the auditor of the Commonwealth. The Attorney General has never met with me the entire time we've been elected. And she has only defended the Speaker and Senate President. And in fact, and indeed, she is representing the Speaker and Senate President in the Supreme Judicial Court right now. I have filed a lawsuit to sue the legislature into compliance, and the Attorney General has decided to represent the Speaker and the Senate President in that lawsuit against the Office of State Auditor. And we're just trying to get this audit done. And what she's saying is that she doesn't believe that we even have the right to an attorney to be able to make our case. She believes that she has the right to represent the Speaker and Senate President against our office, but that we don't have the right to an attorney to even defend ourselves against the Speaker and Senate President's claims that they don't have to be audited under the law that you voted for. So right now I'm actually fighting for our civil rights under the Constitution, which affords all of the folks in Massachusetts who live here, okay? We all get access to an attorney under our Constitution. We have a right to what's called due process. Under our federal Constitution, we have a right to due process. So we're asking the Supreme Judicial Court to recognize our right to an attorney. And I've said that if we don't get that right recognized, Kevin, I am going to appeal that to the highest court in this nation if need be. So I certainly hope our judiciary here in Massachusetts doesn't deny our access to the justice system to be able to make our case, doesn't deny our right to an attorney, because that's very problematic if they do, not just for the Office of State Auditor, but for all of us if that happens. And we need to know that this is what's happening. It's a very big deal what's going on right now. It's become more than just an audit. It's become about due process, civil rights, and access to the justice system. We're seeing a lot of issues in the system right now being highlighted through this audit issue. And it's a cause for concern.
I think it's worth asking you is, I believe that you have reached out many times to the governor, Maura Healey, seeking some kind of intervention or to intervene in this matter. I think you and I have had a conversation off camera, and one of the things that you had mentioned is there's a way for folks who are tuned in to be able to reach out. There's something that you're looking to have filed. Could you share with our viewers what it is that you want them to do, to have the governor do in regards to this situation?
So I have asked the governor of this Commonwealth, Governor Healey, to file what's called an amicus brief. Mm-hmm. What that is it's simply a legal-ish letter to the courts that asks them to support our position. And it shows the courts that you're supporting a particular side in a matter. Now, what's been happening is the governor has been going out and saying that she very much supports the audit getting done, that she very much supports the 72%, and that she thinks the legislature should get audited. But the governor hasn't returned my phone calls to her about this issue for over a year, okay? And I have very much asked the governor to please help me to make sure that this law gets enforced, saying that the Speaker and the Senate President and the Attorney General are all working against our office right now, and they've ganged up on the Office of State Auditor, and they're actually conspiring behind the scenes to find a way to break the law. Now, folks have said to me, well, conspiring's a strong word, Diana. Are you sure you want to use that word? Unfortunately, yes, that's the word to use, because conspiring just means 2 or 3 people getting together behind the scenes to break the law. And when you have the Attorney General speaking with the Senate President and the Speaker about violating the 72% voter mandated law that says that they're supposed to audit the legislature, yes, that's conspiring to break the law. And that's public corruption, Kevin. That's not okay. So I have asked the governor to please help, not just me, but to help the 72% to get this law enforced. But she won't call me back. And I don't need to go out for beer with the governor. I don't need for us to be best friends and skip down the street together about every issue. But what I do need is the professional courtesy of a call back. I need the professional courtesy of this issue to be paid attention to. And we need our governor to stand with the people of this Commonwealth on paper where it counts right now, okay? It's not enough to just say at this point in time that you support the audit of the legislature, but then when you're the governor, not actually do anything to demonstrate that support, right? Because verbally making a statement gives you political cover out in the communities that you're seeking re-election in. And that's all well and good for people to try to tell people, oh, sure, they support this. But all that does is it gives political cover out in the community so people think you're doing the right thing. But we need to see action on this where it counts. And if you say you support the 72%, but you can't write a letter to the courts to say that to the courts where it counts and to tell the judges, hey, judges, we really need you to support the people on this. We need you to support the auditor's right to due process to make her case before the courts so this law can get enforced. If you can't do that as the former Attorney General and our current governor, then I'm going to have to ask you to stop going around and saying that you support the 72%, because you're not willing to demonstrate that in any meaningful way. That means that you kind of just want to be able to say it so that people think you support it. But if you're not talking to the auditor's office, if you're not willing to document that to the courts where it counts, then that's not supporting. That's just lip service, right? So we really need the governor to get on the record in the courts where it counts. And she has until only April 15th to do that. So we're hoping that she does that. We've been asking now for quite some time, for several days at least, if not, a couple of weeks at this point. And we still haven't heard anything back, Kevin. So that's concerning.
Let me ask you this. How confident are you that the SJC is going to ultimately side with your office and by extension, the voters, the 72%?
I don't really have a lot of faith in the courts right now, and it pains me to say that. I wish I had more faith than I do. And I've actually been criticized by a couple of governor's counselors, former governor's counselors, who actually appoint judges. They vote on the appointments of judges. And what they've essentially said is, how dare you criticize the judicial system at all, auditor? And they've said it's dangerous for me to raise my concerns with the court systems right now and the way that things are happening. And I've actually said, with all due respect, I think what's dangerous is for people who appoint the judges to tell the watchdog of the Commonwealth that they want her to be quiet about her concerns. And I think what's dangerous is when people are forced into silence about their concerns regarding the courts. Now, let me say this. I have great respect for our judges. I have great respect for the people in the courts. I have great respect for the judiciary. But the courts are not infallible. Human beings work in the court system, right? And we need to understand that just because somebody has the title of judge, that does not mean that they are automatically perfect, right? They're human beings just like the rest of us. And there's a system of checks and balances for a reason. Now, I'm elected by the people, or I'm not elected by the people. You, the people of the Commonwealth, are a check on me, okay? These judges are appointed. They are appointed by elected officials, right? They're appointed, they're nominated by the governor, and then they're appointed by the governor's council, and they enter the judgeships, they enter the courts via Beacon Hill. So they get appointed by Beacon Hill, and then they're paid by the legislature, their salaries, right? If they get a raise, that's either approved by the legislature or it's not approved by the legislature. So when you're suing the legislature, like I am, it can be hard to trust that you're going to get a completely impartial hearing. Now, let me just say one more thing here. For the first time in history, I had two judges, okay? The trial court and the appeals court, Justice Amy Blake and Justice Heidi Brieger. These two judges decided that for the first time in history, they didn't want to be audited anymore, that they were going to block an audit from the Office of State Auditor. And now the courts, just so folks know, the courts have always been audited by the Office of State Auditor. We don't interfere with their judicial opinions or anything like that. That's a power of the court. But we do look at their financials, we look at their administrative and their business records, and we were simply trying to go in to conduct an audit of their website accessibility, Kevin, to help people who have disabilities or other accessibility issues to make sure that their websites were ADA compliant and that they were accessible to the general public. And they refused to even let us look at their website in cooperation with them. Now, I said to the judges, even if you think that you don't, technically speaking, have to follow this law, what's wrong with looking at your website? Isn't that something that provides a service to the people of this Commonwealth? Why would you refuse to let us audit your website? And you know what it is, Kevin? They're trying to set precedent so that they don't need to be audited anymore either. And you know what they used as a defense? They said, well, we don't want to be audited anymore because the Attorney General says that the legislature doesn't have to be audited anymore. So we don't want to be audited anymore either. So Kevin, what the courts are doing, some of the courts are doing, some of the judges are doing, is they are using the current Attorney General, Andrea Campbell's defense of the legislature, as a way for them to get out of being audited as well. And so it's really hard for my office right now to believe that after having witnessed these two very powerful judges say to our office that they don't want to be audited anymore either, and after having witnessed, the Attorney General's interaction with judges at the State of the State, where she walked over to them, they hugged each other. One of the judges who's refusing to be audited said to the Attorney General, and I'm paraphrasing, but she essentially said to the Attorney General something like, I love what you're doing. They're friends, right? They're friends. Now, there's nothing unlawful about being friends. There's nothing inappropriate about having friendships. People are allowed to have friendships, relationships, that's okay. But it's concerning to see those very strong friendships when the law is being broken, right? Now, if the law wasn't being broken, I wouldn't be concerned. But if these same judges who have these strong friendships with the state's Attorney General are going to then cite the Attorney General's opinion as the reason why they can just start breaking the law for the first time in history, now I have a concern, right? So I have a lot of concerns about the way the courts are operating right now. And I think that the courts need to be aware that the little trust that people currently have in the court system, that's going to be further eroded depending on this decision right now. That we already don't have a lot of faith and trust in the court systems right now, a lot of us as residents of the Commonwealth. And I think that they have an opportunity right now to demonstrate to the residents that they're going to follow the law and that they're going to respect the will of the people as, the biggest thing that they should be concerned about right now, because the Constitution says essentially that the power belongs to the people. It's there to protect the people, not the politicians. And the judges have the right to get it, have the opportunity to get it right now, and to do right by the people, and to show the people of this Commonwealth that they have the ultimate power, that they have the ultimate decision-making authority, and that they are not concerned about what these powerful Pauls are saying up on Beacon Hill, that they do have the ability to do the right thing. But we're watching right now, right? The people are watching. So we're at a really kind of crazy time in Massachusetts where people need to be paying attention. They need to be paying attention to what's happening on Beacon Hill. They need to be paying attention to what their legislators are doing. They need to be paying attention to what their governor's doing. You're certainly paying attention to what your auditor's doing. And they need to be paying attention to what the courts are doing. All eyes need to be on state government right now. And what's happening, Kevin, is I think that the reason why the eyes haven't been on state government is because there's so much drama happening at the federal level. And don't get me wrong, we need to be vigilant about paying attention to federal level politics and what's happening in the federal government. But we cannot do so at the expense of our state government. Because when we're just looking over here and we're not paying attention to what's going on at the local and state level, it allows for the potential for public corruption to occur, right? And that's not about Democrat or Republican. That's about power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And if the power at our state house and if the power in our state government goes unchecked, then absolute power will corrupt absolutely. So we need to be vigilant and pay attention to what's going on here.
We just got a couple of minutes left here
Okay.
in our conversation. A couple things I want to make sure we touch upon. Timelines in regards to this court case, and also take a moment to talk about a new ballot initiative. This is for public records reform. So start with timelines for folks to watch for. I mean, you mentioned about the amicus brief, April 15th. That's when you want this is to be enacted. talk about the timeline and then again the public records reform.
So we have the amicus briefs due by April 15th. Hoping that we get one from the governor. I'd love to have her support on this. I think it's good for the administration and it's also good for the Commonwealth. In regards to the court case itself, we have oral arguments due by both sides, the Attorney General, Speaker, and Senate President on their side against the people. Their arguments need to be made early May. And then our arguments in the Office of State Auditor for due process, civil rights, and the will of the 72%. We're going to be making the case for the 72%. That's due at the beginning of May as well. I don't have the exact date, but
that's fine.
First week or so of May. Then the courts are going to deliberate. This is my first rodeo. I never thought I'd be going before the SJC, but here we are, so stay tuned. As far as the ballot question is concerned, we have a new ballot question, okay? This ballot question, I need all of your support on. Please go to the voting booth in November. Go vote in the primary in September as well, but in November, you're going to see on your ballot box an act to increase access to public records. Now, what that is it is a bill that makes it so that the legislature and the governor's office are subject to the state's public records laws, meaning that all the documents and more that I've been requesting from the legislature that they've been denying to my office and therefore you, the people, that those records would all be made available directly to you, the taxpayers, upon a simple public records request, so that you don't even need your state auditor to go in and get access to those documents. Now, audits are good. They're a good way to increase transparency and accountability, but they're not the only way to increase transparency and accountability. They're just a small part of how we increase access to what's happening in our state government. Increasing access to public records would make it so that those records are available directly to you, the voters of the Commonwealth. So we need to get that passed. We're the only state in the nation that allows for our legislature, courts, and governor's office to exempt themselves from the state's public records laws. That's unacceptable. Unacceptable. We are Massachusetts. We can and must do better. So I'm asking people, please, let's not continue to be the least transparent state government in the entire nation, which is how we're currently ranked by most good government groups. Okay? Let's lead with respect to transparency. We lead in so many other areas. Let's lead in transparency. I love Massachusetts. This is my home state. A girl like me, coming from Methuen, from a single parent household, had the opportunity to be successful because of living in a great state like Massachusetts. And I'm so humbled to have had the opportunities that I've had to be able to even serve in the roles that I've served in and to continue to serve. But we are not perfect, right? We're a great state, but there's always room for improvement, okay? And where we need to improve is in this area of transparency. So let's get that done. Let's vote yes on an act to increase transparency and accountability so that every person in Massachusetts can get access to the records that they need to be their own best advocate. Thank you so much, Kevin, for having me on today.
You got it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You got it. And we want to thank you for tuning into a program like Community Chat. The idea is to make you better informed about a lot of things that are going on in and around our community and beyond. Until our next conversation, have yourself a great day.